Hi, my friends. Welcome to the Enneagram for Wholeness email list if you're new here, and welcome back if you've been here for a while. Today's long, but aren't they all long, little essay that I wrote could be easy to shut down from, especially when it looks overtly political at the start. And it is political. It's political in the sense that we're political beings because we can't withdraw from the communities that help to define us, even though it's pretty easy to believe that we can in our hyper-individualized Western society. But it's not political as well, in the sense that is not only about politics, and it's not about only liberal or conservative. It's about political analogy. It's about the struggles and the tensions we're facing politically, and the way that we see them reflected in our organizations, in our families, in our own personal lives and relationships. And it's really important that we're attentive and that we attune to what is going on in some of these debates and in some of these ever-growing divides, really, between people in our country. There's an orientation towards history that I think I want to name, and that I think I have named in the thing that I've written and that I hope you read. It's an important orientation, but orienting ourselves in that way does not also mean that we're willing to do the work of that orientation. And so I just want to say it's easy to give lip service to a certain kind of orientation to history, but it's always a lot of work to do the actual historical work that needs to be done to ground us in the kind of reality that we need to be grounded in order to understand not just what went on in history, but also how that became an inheritance that we're now working with. I understand and recognize that also when we understand our inheritance and when we understand what we've been given when we were born into a world that is as it is, it's not all within our control, and there's varying ways of responding to and addressing what we understand to have been the real history of a place. And that's where the interesting political discussions come into play. It's also where the interesting personal, relational, organizational discussions come into play. And so I've been thinking about this a lot as I've been, living in the reality of the American context and the debates that go on about what is really going on right now, and the way that we talk about media, the way that we talk about who we can trust, the way that we talk about, as in the article, how we teach history. And I've been thinking about that a lot as I have also been coaching, working with individuals who have vastly different needs, who have different kinds of tensions and challenges in their lives. And I'm finding that, strangely enough, these two things are so connected, not just because some of my clients are embedded in the American context, but also because the way that we orient ourselves towards our own stories and towards what that means for our future, the way that we orient ourselves towards our family's stories and our role in that family history. The dreams of our families, the fears of our families, the dreams of our organizations, the fears of our organizations, the way we orient ourselves towards our work. All of these kinds of orientations are deeply affected by what we understand our own history to have been. And it doesn't mean that we have to spend all of our time in history or the past. Actually, we could spend our time in the present and notice quite a lot about what's happening right now. It's the same as, instead of studying history, studying culture and sociology or health. But often when we have the story wrong about what was happening in the past or what is happening now, or when we have fantasies that don't correspond to reality, then we have a really hard time healing the wounds. We have a really hard time. And actually, sometimes there isn't a huge wound. There's just a difference in understanding of what reality is and is like, and the vulnerability of coming to what reality really is can be so healing for people in their relationships, can be so vulnerability inducing when we look at our own stories and look forward to what's possible in the years to come. And so the same problems that inflict us on this large scale, a national, global scale, are the problems that also inflict us in our personal lives. And they mutually inflict one another. And so I guess what I've been thinking a lot about and what I'm interested in and what I hope you hear in what you read, and what I'd like to say now is that Enneagram for Wholeness and the work that I do, and what I see the Enneagram helping us to do, is to help break through the fantasies about what is really real and what's not real. And sometimes that's a question. Sometimes we don't know what's really real. Sometimes we don't know what things would be like if we acted as if we could trust God, or acted as if it's okay if we made a mistake in the past and we need to own it. And then we need to look how to move forward. Acted as if my emotions are actually important and I could listen to them and listen to what they're pointing to in my environment, which might be something that really needs to be addressed, not just internally, but also externally. So there's lots more that could be said, but working with the Enneagram is a way of moving into unclear and uncertain territory by being interested and curious about those parts of reality that we don't know yet, and by being honest about those parts of reality that we could know. If we noticed and named our tendencies to avoid reality in order to protect ourselves. And when we stop protecting ourselves, in ways where we don't need to, because it's true that some people do need to protect themselves, and it's legitimate, a lot of our protections. But when we no longer need to protect ourselves, what's amazing is that the protection often makes it so we can't see a lot of things. And so when the protections come down, when we risk allowing the protections to come down around our understanding of reality, then we see reality anew. And that doesn't mean I live my best life now, because sometimes that's painful. Because sometimes we have to look at a wound. Sometimes we have to see darkness, which means not seeing anything sometimes. Sometimes we have to search for that light. And that's hard, because it's nice. Sometimes our protections are a lot nicer than what reality is like. But that only works for some people, and that puts us out of relationship with what is real, and then it makes it hard to be in other relationships where people see reality differently. It's hard to negotiate. It's hard to discuss. Welcome to the United States of America. We have a lot of work to do. But as I was writing this, I did feel, alongside some of my grief, I felt a lot of hope. And hope is something that really does energize my work with the Enneagram and my work with clients. And so I hope you enjoy this reading, that it's helpful for you. And I also want you to know that if you're interested in coaching work or creating a workshop or some sort of project around working with the Enneagram and something particular, I would love to do that. And I also know other people who might be closer to you who would also like to do that. So I'd love for you to reach out if you feel like that could be a helpful resource. Yeah. Thanks for being here. Wow, we're almost at 10 minutes. girl can talk, especially in isolation. Thanks for being here, and I'll talk to you soon.